Look at that. Isn't that cool? Isn't that beautiful? I'm going to show you some really beautiful pieces today, some cool pieces, some interesting pieces. It's going to be off the cuff, it's going to be unrehearsed, it's going to be unpolished, so I apologize if it's a little rough around the edges. Usually when I get stuff in, I always want to make a video about it, but I also want to do a deep dive into it. That means I need to spend a lot of time researching the piece, photographing the piece, and well, quite frankly, you can get bogged down in doing it. It takes quite a lot of time to really properly research a piece. So I always have this plan, and I do want to put out these kind of videos, but well, time is limited. The other thing that happens is along the way, because these pieces are so cool and you're excited about it, I'm excited about it, I'll show them to customers, and or not even customers, I just show them to my friends, people who share the same passion and interest in Chinese antiques. And along the way, what will happen is inevitably they'll get scooped up. So they'll get scooped up, they get packed, they get sent out the door, and then I'm left with just photos of this piece, and then I never get around to making the video. So today, off the cuff, off the fly, unrehearsed, I'm just going to show you some really nice things, and we're going to talk about them a little bit. I may not be able to tell you everything about each piece because I might be still researching it, so forgive me if that happens, but yeah, let's look at some of this stuff because some of it is just so cool. This is a carved cinnabar lacquer plate, probably early Ming Dynasty, and possibly this depicts a Taoist immortal by the name of Shiwan Mu, and you can see with her attendants following along behind her. It's not really your typical carved lacquer. Now, this was sourced in Japan. Came from the south of Japan, and of course this is a Chinese piece, it's not a Japanese piece. If you know anything about Chinese lacquer though, you will know that all the best Chinese lacquer in the world comes from Japan. And why is that? That is because the Japanese have been collecting and preserving Chinese arts for probably a good 1,000 years. And they've collected them meticulously. Many of them are cataloged. They've preserved them meticulously, kept them in boxes. And while China has had quite a turbulent past, which has not been very good for antiques, Japan has had its own turbulent past as well, but they have done a very good job of preserving these pieces. So even though they were originally from China, in today's world, they all come from Japan. Now, it's, of course, warped, as you see, and that is because the back of this is a hardwood, which is a little unusual. If you are aware of who Harry Gardner is, he is one of the, well, he wrote one of the Bibles on Chinese lacquer. There are several, but he was one of the earliest ones. He talks about this in his book, and it's probably the drying out of the hardwood actually that has caused the severe warping. Of course, you can see a little bit damage, and you can see some cracks in the lacquer. But what really makes this place interesting to me is a friend of mine and a well-known dealer, Michael Gorman, has a very similar plate. In fact, his plate in the center is actually identical. The outer bands are different on his plate, but the center is identical. Now, we know from historical records that some of these pieces were produced using, shall we say, templates, at least as a starter. And so probably these two pieces came from the same workshop and used the same template for the center, but were customized along the sides to use something different. This one has dragons along the side. His has, well, I actually need to check, I can't remember, but it's very different. So yeah, really cool piece that showed up in my hands today. Very excited to have it, and very fun and cool and neat to be able to handle this, especially outside of a museum. Here's another interesting piece that arrived on my doorstep the other day. Yeah, I've actually never really seen this exact form before. So what this is basically this is a scholar's tray. This is a tray that would have sat on the desk of the literati, and perhaps you could picture a couple of scrolls rolled up in here, or a few books stacked in here, or some objects of play, some jade, you know, any of these sort of small scholarly objects could have sat in here. And the aesthetic of it is very recognizable, of course. Very easy to recognize this as Ming, probably later Ming. It is a slightly dark, I would call it a dark burgundy brown lacquer. And what really gives it away though is the basketry panels. Okay, you see inside these shaped cartouches this very, very, very finely woven basketry panels. This is a very, very Ming aesthetic. Very, very Ming. Later Ming aesthetic on this piece. I wouldn't be surprised if this is maybe 17th century without looking closely. You can see the underside. You can see the red, the original red. So some of it is also that it has darkened over the years. And again, now this piece came with its own box. The box is perfectly fitted to the exact size of this piece. The box is clearly quite old because there's a certain level of patina that these boxes acquire over the years. You touch and feel enough of them, you can figure out quite quickly, you know, yeah, how old the boxes are as well. So the piece is old, the box is old, you know, the box is made for the piece. But you know, when you look at it, it is in impeccably good shape. Now, of course, this is why you need to sometimes either touch and feel pieces, or if you can't and you're buying a piece, you need to buy it from a reputable dealer who's doing that for you. Because only when you start to look at the minute scratches on the bottom and the little cracks here and there that you realize, oh, yes, this piece has been around for a very, very long time. Very cool piece, interesting piece. Very, very interesting piece. Okay, next piece is a little interesting. There's a couple of things that are actually quite interesting about this piece. Now, I'll show you in a minute what's in the box, but this box contains a piece that was owned by a bijutsu, sorry, I'm still working on my Japanese, who was active in the early 20th century, and his collection was cataloged in, I believe, Showa 14 maybe, which is like the early 1930s. I have to double check the year. And his pieces were actually cataloged more than once, so they have some nice provenance. So what's in the box? Let's show you. So this, anybody have a guess on how old this is and what this is? Yeah, so this piece looks almost brand new, which is, again, the power of Japanese art collectors who preserve and carefully take care of everything so well. This is actually a Song Dynasty tray. Now, the very simplicity of it, the simple aesthetics, the shape, there is some very fine crackling, which may not show up here. I may have to show you in a photo. These are what's known as snake belly crackles. And the shaped cartouches on the sides, these are all very, very, very Song aesthetic. There's a beautiful piece in the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and this piece would fit alongside that piece just perfectly. They share a lot of the same aesthetics. So Song lacquer is quite rare by comparison to, say, Song ceramics. I've seen some lovely Song cosmetic cases around. They're beautiful, but let's be honest, ceramics are hardy. They're hard. They survive relatively well as long as you don't drop them. Lacquer is a lot more fragile. So for every 1 or 2 or 3 beautiful cosmetic cases, or wow, I would say maybe for every 50 or 100 Song cosmetic cases that you find, you might find one piece of lacquer or even less. So Song lacquer is it does exist, but it is relatively rare. And when I see it, I always get a little bit excited. It's not the first time I've held something from this era in lacquer in my hands, but every time I'm always impressed. Very understated, very beautiful.